All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another webinar from NinjaOne. I'm Jonathan Crowe. I'm Director of Community here at Ninja, and I have with me two wonderful guests, longtime friends. We have John Davenjay. He's president of Bowman Williams, which is a staff agency focusing on the MSP market in particular. John, thanks so much for joining.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, this is not John's first foray. He's joined us for some other events in the past. Mark, however, this is your first time joining one of our webinars. Thank you so much for taking time. Mark, you are operations manager at Bowman Williams, and you have had your hands very dirty in with this data that we're going to be sharing with everybody.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate you having us here today, Jonathan, and Ninja as a whole. Like you said, I'm the operations manager. I've also been a senior recruiter here for almost 5 years. So not only am I getting, like you said, hands dirty in the data, but I'm getting to talk to these candidates one-on-one and get their personal stories.
Well, I appreciate you both coming on to share your perspectives because you guys have such a great viewpoint of the market, really. I mean, those one-on-one conversations you're having with candidates, so you're getting that perspective, but you're also seeing the overall trends in hiring, which is really, really interesting and a look that a lot of us don't get, right? And so, obviously, for those of you tuning in, the topic of this webinar, pretty clear, right? We're going to be talking all about MSP salary trends. And before we dive into them, we can give you a little bit of a backstory about why this came about and why Bowman Williams are such great folks to be delivering this data. So I remember looking around quite a while ago, noticing that hiring is obviously a huge priority. People are thinking about it all the time. Man, the pandemic and everything that has happened after has made it even more of an issue that's top of mind and has introduced even more challenges and opportunities, right? Around 2019, 2020, I noticed that you guys had created a salary guide that really went into a lot of detail, breaking down, here's some stats and trends and actual figures relating to a ton of MSP roles. And this was available on your website. And I thought this was an amazing resource. And I reached out to you guys. We invited you on a couple of webinars to talk about hiring, what you've seen. And I think as part of those conversations, I think I was talking with Eric too, Eric Spear, who is also on the Bowman Williams staff, who's going to be in the chat answering questions. And I was like, are you guys going to be updating that anytime soon? And knowing that there's so much work going into it, I think the first one, I mean, there's thousands of interviews you guys have conducted, and that's where you're pulling this data from. So I knew it was a huge lift for you guys, but I was like, obviously this is popular. People really like this information. If you guys ever are planning on updating it, and if there's any way that we can help, we would love to do that. And so fast forward to, gosh, I don't know, last fall, right? We'd been in touch, but we reconnected. And you guys said, well, hey, actually, we're updating it. And we could use your help with launching. And so that's kind of how we came to today, where we're really excited to help you guys announce that you have a new updated version of the salary guide, the 2023 version, that is free, available for download, ungated, right on your site. If everyone here on the chat looks or on the call here goes to the resources section, you'll see a link that takes you right to Bowman Williams' site. You can click download and download the guide right now, which you should totally do. And I'm going to stop talking. I've been blabbing a lot. I'll kick it back over to you, John, and let you add some of your perspective here. But maybe tell folks a little bit more about the salary guide, why you guys created it, and then we can get into kind of the methodology and everything too.
Sure. Yeah, very good. So yeah, we've been staffing the MSP industry for about 12 years now. We exclusively staff that industry. That's my background before I started the company, was managed services. And we now have over 800 MSP clients that we staff for. And we have a team of recruiters that are conducting somewhere between 50 and 70 interviews per week. So it's like, 240, 250, fresh candidates that we're bringing in every single month. And then during those interviews, we are asking those candidates about, their day-to-day jobs. We're administering a technical MSP-specific technical assessment, documenting the reasons for leaving. And of course, we're documenting what they're currently earning, where we can and when we can, which is usually, 80% of the time. we're doing the interview. And we're also brokering placements, with our clients. We're introducing these candidates for full-time hire with these MSPs, and we'll broker the offer to get the candidate to come aboard. So we have a plethora of data coming into us, lots of data points that we were able to slice and dice and organize into the finished product of the MSP Salary Guide. So yeah, that's how it came about, and our involvement in creating it.
Nice. And Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the methodology? How you guys are diving into this and collecting the data and slicing it up.
Yeah, so we went back from 2020 to 2022 for this current salary guide. We looked at all the candidates we placed as well as all the candidates we interviewed. So that's over 2,000 unique MSP candidates that we are factoring into each of the 32 roles we have listed in our salary guide. So John and I went through one by one, manually sorted them to make sure they fit into the exact category as they should. So that way, you all are getting the most accurate data that we can provide from conducting all of these interviews.
Absolutely. So if anyone has any questions, Chris, drop a link to the site. Yes. And so I'm going to go ahead and say we answered that one. I did just drop a link to the guide right here in the chat. Again, though, you should be able to see a resources section down at the bottom of your Zoom window there. And there's also a link to there's a link to the Bowman Williams guide, and there's also a PDF, a link to a PDF that we made. It's a hiring and retention guide that has some tips and things too. So those are some free resources for you all. Oh yeah, you're welcome. And I did also, before we dive in, we got a lot of good things to cover here. And we definitely want to hear from you. So let us know your questions. Let us know what you're seeing. As always, with any of the Ninja webinars, we treat this as not, hey, yes, we have very smart people here that want to share their knowledge with you, but we want to hear from you too. And you guys are seeing things, you have your own perspectives that are equally valuable to us. So definitely in the chat, hop in there. Let us know what you're seeing and what the things that you're dealing with. To that end, we've got some polls. And so I just launched one at the beginning of the webinar that folks have already started answering, and that's great. Definitely dive in and share your thoughts this way. This is just asking about priority. First of all, how big of a priority is hiring for you this year? We see Mark and John, the most popular answer right now. About a third of folks are saying it's a 5. It's a big need. I'm wondering, before we get in, I'm kind of going off script here a little bit, but I'm wondering if that jives for you in terms of the kind of need that you've seen. Or is there kind of pent up demand that folks have been sitting on for a while? How's this jive with what you're seeing?
Yeah, very good. So I think from 2021 to 2022 is unprecedented time. And for us, business was really good because a lot of MSPs were in full scale mode. Things were kind of dormant and quiet during the heart of the pandemic. And then I feel like MSPs came out swinging afterwards. We've seen a ton of brokering and acquisitions in the industry, a lot of change, a lot of shakeup. We didn't necessarily have the great resignation like a lot of the other US industries had. We had like the great mass migration, and a lot of candidates were ping-ponging back and forth. Salaries were being driven up very high. And I feel like towards the end of 2022, things kind of started to plateau a little bit. And then they picked up they spiked really high in Q1. It was one of the best quarters. We had like a record-setting number of new clients come aboard to start working with us. And so that's where we're currently at. So it's kind of a fever pitch out there, and I'm not the least bit surprised that it's a point of contention and a pain point for a lot of MSPs. And there's a lot of shakeup going on within the industry, and it's a very interesting contrast between where the candidates are at and where the clients are at. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but I'm not surprised that it's a need and it's a pain point.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big takeaways, not to be a spoiler at all, but I mean, remote work, remote hiring, and work from home is a huge trend that you guys have a lot to cool data insights into. To that point, Miguel has a question that we definitely anticipate. I mean, of course, when we're talking about hiring, it can vary a lot based on geo, right? And so he's asking, are the when you're conducting where's the data coming from basically? Are these confined to mostly kind of major metros, or any insights you could share that way?
Sure, absolutely. And then feel free to piggyback on this one, Mark. So we are currently saturated and operating and have hundreds of clients or MSP clients located in Washington, D.C. So these are major metropolitans, but Washington, D.C., the New York metropolitan area, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, and Los Angeles. And for any companies that are MSPs that are based in a more like mid-market, mid-type metropolitan area, what you can typically do is expect for your numbers to be about 8%, 8.9, 8.19 to be exact percent, less than the numbers and figures in the guide. And if someone is in a very rural part, part of like Pennsylvania, for example, it could be up to 15% lower. But so the salary stats are based off of primarily metropolitans. Mark, did you want to piggyback on any of that to further explain?
Yeah, I would say that compared to our last salary guide, with the explosion of remote work, we've been having a huge influx of candidates from across the country. So this data, we were able to pull that 8 and roughly 15, 16%, depending on how big or small the area is that you live. That's coming from a lot more data points than we've ever had before compared to our last salary guide. So we feel confident that should apply to your business, and hopefully it is falling right where you land in wherever you are in the United States.
Yeah, and I mean, feel free, once we start getting into specific numbers too, I mean, anyone who is in the audience who's comfortable sharing any kind of stats they're seeing or how this relates to them, feel free to do that. Launched another poll, switched it up here, asked about biggest hiring challenges. And I see a few people raising their hands, so I'll get to those in just a second. So we asked, what are some of the biggest ones? You can select more than one option here, but finding good candidates is really way out in front of, even once you find them, beating competitive offers, vetting the candidates, and retention too. It's really, man, where are all those good people at? Which you guys know a little something about.
Yeah, you can say that. We get around 20,000 resumes per month. And then, as I said, we're interviewing about 250 per week. And then Bowman Williams will typically interview about 20 to 24 candidates for every single position that we work. So that is a wide net. And I know we have the economies of scale, and that's why we do what we do to solve this pain point. And we have the machine to be able to do it. But yeah, so that's how it works for us. 20,000 candidates are coming in. We only end up interviewing about 250, and then we'll interview those candidates again, usually about 20 to 24 of them per position that we work for one of our clients. So that's how much legwork we have to put in, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say that the whole aspect of remote work opening up the playing field, so to speak. There's pros and cons with that, right? A con being, if you are in a lower income level, maybe there's a risk of your all-stars being poached away. At the same time, I know you guys have seen one of the takeaways from this report, and again, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but is seeing that it really has broadened people's options in terms of being able to go outside of your primary geo. If you are open to remote work, it really kind of extending your candidate pool.
Absolutely. Game changer. It's been a game changer, and it's had so many different evolutions along the way. Right now, the dichotomy, the comparison between what we're currently seeing between the push and pull effect between a lot of MSPs going back to spending more days in the office, where candidates are still kind of stuck in that mindset. Their psyche is still set on wanting to hold out for these positions where they're working fully remote, and that increased flexibility in the work-life balance schedule. And it's starting to dwindle. More companies are going back into the office. And right now, the move everyone is making is currently hybrid. And so you're finding MSPs in a lot of in a very common position where it's a lot of misfires. So what that means is it takes more candidates to be interviewed. It takes longer time to fill the position. And then we're seeing more offers getting rejected or they're getting signed and the candidates don't show up for work. I'm sure we've all experienced that at some point or another. And we're seeing also an uptick in candidates misrepresenting themselves during the technical interviews. And so, yeah, I think it's all over the board, and it's a moving target for sure. Mark, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, and I would say a great way we're able to kind of steer away from people talking a big game who can't back it up is through our technical test. We actually worked with our MSP partners to develop that. So it's really been able to weed away the people talking a bigger game that they can handle, so that when we are looking, especially with remote candidates, because that's where you want to get the most value, because you are allowing that person that autonomy to not come into the office, that they're fully vetted and truly can hit the ground running.
That's great, guys. And I'm realizing that an obvious poll that I missed on here was basically for those in the audience. I mean, are you remote? Where are you on that spectrum of being? There's a lot of MSPs I talk with that are fully remote, and they always have been. This isn't really a new change for them. There's a lot of folks who know, like they are in the office and they see a lot of value in that, and they've gone back that way. And then of course there's hybrid all in between. I didn't do the poll and I can't add it now, and I'm kicking myself. But in the chat, if you folks want to just kind of like raise hands there, like who's remote and who's not, what your situation is, that'd be interesting. I did launch another poll that's asking about the percentage of your overhead, basically, that is like with your revenue, that the payroll is. So with your payroll, what is your total payroll compared to your revenue? What percentage is that? And that's something that John, I think you were saying was kind of an interesting question. Anything, we've seen some kind of like industry benchmarks. I know you had your own expectations of where that may fall. Anything you want to say there?
I think it's I'll try to guess 60 to 70%. Professional services firms tend to put most of their overhead costs into floating salaries, and in those instances, salary data is probably even more important for professional services firms, because over time, if you're incrementally extending job offers to candidates and you're paying above market rate, yes, it's going to help you with the retention, but you still might be overspending, and that will add up over time. Also, if an MSP is not sending job offers that are in line and calibrated to what we're finding in the salary guide, it opens up to premature turnover. And in professional services firms, that's a no-no. You're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back every time that proprietary information walks out the door. So making informed decisions on the salary, it's super important for any professional services firm. But if I had to guess, we're putting down money, it would be 60 to 70% is the average percentage for overhead. But what's the answer? Do we know what it is?
Well, no, I mean, we've got the answers are kind of coming in across the board here in terms of percentages. I gave people ranges, and about 42% of folks who have answered the poll say it's somewhere between 20 and 40, actually. And then we have another 30% saying between 40 and 60. We have another 13 saying between 60 and 80. And then we got a few folks, some folks that are outliers on the either end of that. And I'm sure there's a lot of variables here and the way I'm wording this question. Okay. So a couple more polls, guys. Bear with me for a minute, and then we're really going to dive into this thing. I'm going to move this along a little bit more quickly. Okay, payroll changes. This is another poll that folks may be interested in. How has, we're talking about this in a vague way, like, yeah, hiring is challenging. It's a big priority. How has payroll increased or decreased in the past year? I was just talking with an MSP owner who was excited about this webinar, really excited to get the guide, and based in Florida, always been remote, but saying, man, he feels like maybe everyone feels this way, I don't know, but he feels like they're feeling salary pressures like disproportionate compared to the rest of the country. And his payroll is going up over 18% this year. And actually, I mean, looking in the poll here, we got early responses. We got about 50% of folks who have answered saying it's increased at like 11 to 20. And this kind of goes into like where are you making that up? I mean, margins for a lot of folks already pretty tight. So you're seeing this pressure added on. Is this something that you guys are kind of getting some input from too, in terms of like owners having to, be competitive and raise their salaries? You getting any insights there, like how folks are dealing with this?
Yeah, I think we could probably talk for half a day about that topic.
Yeah.
The average starting salary has increased by 14% post-COVID, 14%. And you can imagine for a lot of MSPs that might not be hiring on the regular, that they dip their toe into the market and they're seeing candidates requesting, what equates to maybe, $10,000 to $15,000 more in base salary. It could be shocking. You have to go back and revise the budget. I mean, there's a whole calculus that goes into extending a job offer, right? You have people that are currently working, for you at that salary band, and you don't want to exceed that amount too much. You also need to take into consideration, if you hire a person that's really good at the top of your salary range, are you going to have a long enough runway to continually, dangle a carrot from them and offer them regular salary increases and performance raises and bonuses? If you max out your budget and your offer, you might lose them because they're not going to be continually making more money. So this has been a game changer, and it's really shook the industry, I think, and it's really changed how candidates position themselves in the market. It's a candidate-driven market. That means candidates are greedy. I'm sure people have experienced that themselves. But yes, it's really shaking things up. But 14% is the number that's really changed over time. So I'm not surprised it's over 11%. Mark, did you want to add to that at all?
I think you pretty much covered it well. Being on mostly the candidate side, I don't get to talk to the owners themselves. So I think you really hit the nail on the head there.
Do you see, obviously, and this is, we see all the tech layoffs and everything. And I think that from what I've seen and heard talking to people, that the MSP world is a little bit insulated from that. But it seems like things have kind of come back to earth a little bit. And so we have a question from John, commenting on a question. Thanks, John, for putting this in there. He says, we paid a premium for mediocre staff in 2022. Ouch. 20% above average. So like 2022, salaries going wild. And now they're seeing non-tech clients cutting pay right now. The market's starting to correct. He's wondering, are you seeing MSPs trying to course correct a bit and fix these salaries by pay cuts or replacing overpaid employees? Is that happening, or is it still competitive enough where there's not like a retroactive trying to correct that overpay? I guess you could argue, is it an overpay or not? I don't know.
Right. Or is it just a recalibration and adjustment to the norm? It's a really good question. I think what we've seen is that rather than MSPs calibrating to reduce starting salaries and pay, there's been layoffs and low performers getting terminated. And we even see people that have been, brought in at a, 2021, 2022 salary, which would be, 14, 20% higher. And if they don't meet expectations in like 3 months, they get the snip. But January, February, March, and April were all like record-setting months for MSP candidates flooding the market. And I anticipate that was primarily from people being let go, not necessarily because they were, out there sampling the market to try and find new positions. But yeah, it'd be great if we kind of like recalibrated on that, because it's polarized at the moment, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've got we've got a ton of good questions already, and you have all the stuff that you want to present. And so I'm going to be a little for those of you on the call who have asked a question and you're waiting patiently, I'll ask you to be patient just a little bit longer. I do have a couple I'll toss you guys way before we let you go off to the races with sharing some of the data. In addition to that, one last poll. This is about hiring competition, and this is asking on a scale from 1 to 5, how competitive would you rank your hiring metro or region if you're in a rural area? And folks are jumping in and answering. Thank you for doing that. It looks like, 4s, some 3s and 5s. And so people are definitely feeling that more competitive than not. But again, it seems to, if we pair that with the first poll, or the second one, it's not necessarily the biggest challenge is competing with these competitive offers. It's more just like, we just need to find the good candidates here. They're getting scooped up. Okay. So thank you all for answering those polls. We are going to be sharing the recording. We'll be sure to share the poll answers too, for folks who are interested in that. And then before I let you guys go off to the races, just one other quick question. This was a good one in the Q&A. And this is from Evan, and this is about contracting. So I guess it's going back to kind of the methodology here. You know, is this covering, this is basically the salary data. We're talking about just to clarify, we're talking about full-time in-house employees. Is that correct?
That's correct. Every single data point gathered is a full-time salaried employee on a salary.
Okay. Okay, great. And then Evan was also interested. So sorry, this Evan's question is a little bit different actually, now that I'm looking at it more closely. So he's saying our clients are contracting right now. We're being acquired by much larger companies, which means that we're losing them, unfortunately. With salary inflation, with product inflation, decreasing revenues, they're feeling a pinch. And he's just curious, you know, how unique is this? Are others in the same boat? I mean, Evan, I know from previous webinars we've done, it hasn't come much, you know, we haven't really talked about salary as much as obviously today. But people have definitely mentioned this when it comes to inflation for hardware and other, you know, the products that they're purchasing, their COGS in general, you know, cost of everything going up, and sometimes finding some difficulty passing on those costs to their clients, right? And so, yeah, I mean, if you, I'm curious as well if folks want to chime in, how they're feeling, you know, if that's still as painful as it was maybe a year ago. Are you seeing the light at the tunnel there? Are you still kind of in the thick of it? Always curious for folks' thoughts. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna close that poll so I can stop distracting myself. Thank you all again for answering those. Let's get to it. We're about halfway through and you guys have a ton you want to share. So thank you for answering some of those questions. We'll definitely keep them coming in the chat, keep them coming in the Q&A. We'll make sure that we get to them as we're going through this. But why don't I kick it over to you guys to start diving into some of the key trends that you wanted to highlight. And one of them, this is interesting to me, especially as a non-technical person, right? You were kind of calling out, of course, when we think about hiring for MSPs, everyone thinks about technicians, but there's also the non-technical or less technical resources. And so you called out a current market trend of MSPs investing into hiring protectors of MRR position. I haven't heard this framed. I like that a lot. But basically, you're talking about account managers, I'm guessing, customer service, increasing renewal rates, kind of upselling, ultimately protecting the MRR. So yeah, really curious on what you found for that. And I'll share my screen because I think you've got a chart here.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So what are we currently talking about? Talking about MRR protectors of your monthly recurring revenue. We have an unprecedented number of positions open on our board that would be characterized as liaisons, client liaisons, people that are working in a TAM role where they're focused on regular touches, quarterly, reviews, get that renewal. vCIOs are coming in and, really involved on the upselling on both, service delivery and professional services side of the house. And we're finding that, we're not necessarily, it's probably open for debate here, but we're not necessarily in a recession. It's the fear of a recession, and people are spending their dollars differently. And that is impacting how MSPs are forecasting for the future. And some are battening down the hatches, and others are, making all kinds of different moves with scaling or acquisitions. But a lot of MSPs are tight with their dollars right now, and they're focused on that renewal. So TAMs, we've seen a dramatic spike. Over 80% of the candidates that we've interviewed for a TAM since October, 80% of the candidates we've interviewed have come in just in like the last month or two. So that is an unprecedented number of TAMs actively on the market. And we're also seeing an uptick in those positions. And so what's happening is your clients are trying to invest in service delivery managers, help desk managers, operation managers, the vCIOs, the TAMs, to protect that revenue, ensure they're retaining their clients. I don't know, an interesting poll, Jonathan, would be to see how MSPs are faring on the professional services side, selling projects right now. I'd be curious to know that, because what we're seeing is a lot of the positions getting away from, Azure project engineers and senior project level positions. That was the hot term and the most commonly filled position in 2022. Right now, that's not the case. It's client liaisons. And the salary guide, let's see here. Be able to get that slide up. Very good. You guys got it up. So if you're looking at that slide, I would say the thing that's probably most interesting is going to be relevant to this exact conversation is the salary band for the technical account managers. And a good example of how this guide can be used is we know that the TAMs, they are primarily the face of the company. They're the face that your clients are seeing and the voice they're hearing on a regular basis. And they're the ones that tee up and ensure that client renewal. So this guide is a good tool for when extending job offers to make sure that you are, keeping those people in the seat, those TAMs, for a long period of time. They're probably more valuable than your tier ones, tier twos, arguably, because that client is anchored in that person and that relationship. So the guide in this case could be used to make sure that offers, are being extended probably around the average or north of the median. I feel like the median often gets overlooked in the salary guide. Again, that median means if you were to take all the data points that you had and you were to sort them from high to low, the median is the exact middle number. It's the exact middle number. And so that's how many data points fall north and south of the median. And so that number will tell you, if you're with the consensus and paying over the average, or if you're with the other consensus maybe paying under the average. And so offers in this case can be extended where you're making an offer average of $90,000, but you're going to want to give a career track explanation when you extend that job offer or in the offer letter that shows them how they would get to that top end of the range, that 97,000. The salary guide, you can break that out and point to it. But even if you don't, you can probably rest assured that other offers won't be coming in much higher than that. And if you show them a career track to get to 97, you'll probably keep them in the seat and protect yourself from attrition sooner, because they don't know if they're going to be reaching that band and they might go out and start interviewing. So that's a very popular trend right now. So where a lot of MSPs are investing heavily back into scaling. A lot of those candidates for TAM positions and client liaisons are often locally based and working in a hybrid capacity, as opposed to being in the office or full remote. They're typically hybrid. So that's a good antidote for being able to use the salary guide. It's an important position that people are working really hard to retain right now. And that's the salary range you probably want to fall for somewhere around 90,000 and probably have a career track up to 97.5.
In some of these too, I mean, vCIO in particular, I mean, there's been a lot of interesting discussion around that. It seems to be more and more of a trend in terms of a official role that people were talking about. And I know there's a lot of discussion around how that should be structured, and should there even be a time component to it, like, you're charging time against this person, what's their metrics like, how are you really kind of setting all that up. But for some of these other ones, like a sales exec and everything, I mean, is this taking into account anything to do with like percentage, like other elements of comp, that not just salary, but the percentage of deals and things like that? Quotas?
That's a great question. And the answer is that there's just, it is just a wide spectrum of ways to compensate people beyond the base salary, that we could not find a modality, like a common way of being able to bake that into the salary guide by factoring that information. And so to answer your question directly, no, these are strictly base salaries for all the positions, including the MSP sales executive. And I wish we had commission data for you.
Yeah, commission. That's what, man, I can't believe I was blanking on that word. Thank you. So a couple of things just to for folks who maybe joined on, but asking Very good questions. Will the guide be mailed out? Even better, Jacob, you can go to the resources button down at the bottom, and you can go to a link right to Bowman Williams site, and you can download the guide. We will also follow up in the email that has the recording and a link to the guide as well. And then we had another repeat question about how do we modify these numbers to our local markets? And you threw out a couple of percentages, John. You said one for like if you're maybe a mid market metro, and then also if you're rural. And rural, I think you mentioned is up to the 50% kind of lower. And I can't remember was it around 8% for mid market? Was it something like that?
Yes, correct. So the full answer would be again that we about 15 to 20% of the data points in here are for people that are located all across the country, not just the 6 cities that we staff. And then if someone is located in a mid-sized metropolitan, what they would probably do is reduce the numbers in the guide by 8%. And if someone is working in a very rural part of America, I'd probably do 15%.
Okay, great. But yeah, I mean, great point about the client liaisons, the MRR protectors. I love the way that you frame that, and really interesting. I think it's a level, like I said, it's not the first thing people immediately think about, but obviously a bigger and bigger role for folks as they're growing.
Yes.
Is there anything else you want to say on that, you or Mark, before we get into another big theme, which is how work from home has been impacting salaries?
I think we can transition to work from home. Unless Mark, sorry, Mark, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I said one thing. So I know you brought up a lot of people talking about the big layoffs happening across the country. And while the MSP industry was insulated, what we've seen is because they're cutting a lot of overhead costs, those more expensive people, the service delivery managers, the vCIOs, we've seen a huge influx of these profiles on the market, a lot of them coming with a lot of great experience. And so that's also helping to, for those MSPs that are scaling and growing, there's a lot of those people out there that you can look to bring on board. And with the market being the way it is, they've been a lot more flexible with their salaries when talking to them compared to past years when things were a lot more competitive.
Thanks for that, Mark. That's a great point. Great insight. All right. So kicking back out to here for working from home. I mean, this is a slide obviously highlights that increase 14% that you mentioned before, John. But the rest of this, a lot of it is based around working from home, remote work, and its impact both for employees and for owners.
Yes. So I think one of the big takeaways is that salaries have increased, as mentioned, post-pandemic by 14%. And what we've done in the salary guide is for tier 1s, tier 2s, and tier 3s, we've taken the 3 most commonly tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 positions that are hired to work full remote. And we've broken them out to compare how much cost savings or how much the starting salary difference was when MSPs would hire that profile to be local or versus full remote. And one of the most interesting takeaways is that in some cases, the starting salary for the person working full remote was more. And that was because naturally there's benefits to having an increased candidate pool. You can get your hands around more talent, and you can probably end up paying what you would pay to hire someone locally, but the value, the quality of that talent and the skill set and the tenure, your brand of customer service maybe, or a unique peripheral skill set, you will be able to hit a home run with that hire and pay what you pay locally. And in some cases, you find that the MSPs were actually hitting a home run, getting that talent, but they didn't even pay more for it. So it didn't always translate where people were going out to hire full remote just to capitalize on the cost savings. It was to win the top talent they can get their hands around. But yeah, how we got to where we're currently at is those stats right there. So the big takeaway is also going to be the fact that most positions right now are being filled to work hybrid. Hybrid schedule would be typically 2 days working from home, 3 days in the office, or something comparable to that. And that is where most MSPs are currently trending. We actually see a very large percentage of MSPs also going back to full in the office. That also be another good poll question. I wish we would have come up with
I know, right?
Jonathan. But so where does that leave us right now? As I was saying earlier, that the number of misfires is something I haven't seen in, since probably COVID, or in the last 10 years I've been staffing this industry. Misfires means that offers are getting turned down unexpectedly. People are accepting them and then getting a counter offer and not joining, not showing up the first day for work. The person's being hired and then quickly being let go, and a very short, within 90 days of starting, because they weren't worth that price tag. Candidates got conditioned to higher salaries and work from home. Full work from home positions are more of a luxury right now. The norm is hybrid. So top talent is very often right now very passive in their job search, because they're holding out for that high 14% paying salary, higher paying salary, and the opportunity to work from home. So they're out there, they're kissing a lot of frogs, sampling the market. And so a lot of candidates are starting to interview and then they disappear. So it makes interviewing for MSPs a lot harder to navigate, to really pinpointing who's serious about the job search, trying to find a candidate that's, not asking for an inflated salary, not asking for what seems like off the wall demands to want to work from home. That has driven up the number of candidates MSPs have to hire to interview to make a successful hire, and the number of days that it takes for an MSP to hire. It's increased somewhere about 15 to 20% from last year to this year, which is a startling number. And then, Jonathan, if you want to go ahead and switch to the next slide.
Sure.
Please.
So you see this one?
Yes, correct. So you're getting two different things here, folks. You're getting the top floating bar graph, which will show you these different flavors of the L1 positions that we've documented into a table salary on a different page. You can see the median number, which is the line in the middle of the actual bar. And then you can see the range on the top and the bottom. And the reason we're showing this visual to you is because the bottom infographic is showing how the cost savings was negligible to the opposite of cost savings. They were spending more to hire these two different profiles. So an L1 help desk, right? Typical down the pipe, vanilla L1 help desk. If MSPs weren't really necessarily going remote to hire this person, that's kind of obvious. But when they did, they go outside their locality, and they would find someone that had a level 1.5 light server work type of profile, type of experience. And that person would typically cost more than what they would find locally, but they brought so much value to the table, MSPs would justify paying more money. This was also a common strategy and a very popular position to get filled for a large part of last year. Last year, we were filling primarily senior project engineers, typically with the Azure skill set, and then tier 1.5 to tier 2s. Right around that $60,000 range. It's probably because MSPs were bringing in the tier 1.5s, training them up quickly to become high value level 2s that were probably, affordable level 2s. So another, antidote for being able to use the salary guide in a meaningful way relevant to right now.
Excellent. And thank you for that, John. And a couple other questions just before we continue on. This kind of goes back to, and not necessarily specific to these numbers here, but back to the methodology. Just have a question: how many MSPs participate in the survey, and then also would you say this is based off? We had another question in terms of using the guide. Is it geared more for owners and for candidates? I know my thought would be, well, it's both, but yeah, interested on your take on that.
That's a really good question. The real answer is when we developed the salary guide, it's meant to be positioned in the minds of MSP employers, hiring managers, and owners. But the reality of the situation is that these numbers are what they are, and that means that we took a snapshot of data, we've organized it, and it's out there for everyone to make, for everyone's edification, to make wise career decisions and hiring decisions. It can be used as a tool from either side, and it's not being marketed one way or the other. But so that's the answer. It can be used for both sides of the house. But I anticipate that owners and hiring managers will probably get more value out of it.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I mean, it does kind of get to well, here I've got one more question based on that, but first, Mark, can you go back to just the methodology here? Because how many MSPs participate in the survey? It's not just MSPs, right? Those interviews you're conducting are for candidates as well. So anyway, how would you answer this question? Who all responded to the survey?
So in terms of the salary guide, so from the placement data, I would say over the years, it's probably over 150 different MSPs that made hires from us, John, over those 3 years. And then as for the number of MSPs those candidates came from, we have no way to track that without manually going through all 2,000. But we're getting people from, dozens, and especially in big cities that we work in, like New York and like LA, where we're probably getting candidates from 50 plus MSPs in the area, on a monthly basis. So that question, I can't give you a confident answer. But in terms of the placement data, that's 150 plus different companies that we've had the pleasure to work with.
Yeah. We're seeing something. Thank you for that, Mark. And we're seeing something here in the chat where, going back to this friction, right? Of we've got candidates that the market's saying they're worth something, and they have their own thoughts about that too, and employers have their thoughts about that. It's not always all aligned, right? I mean, it would seem to me the salary guide is another opportunity to have some conversations and to be able to point to, okay, well, here's a source of truth,
Right.
that we can kind of set some baselines. Having these conversations, though, I mean, let's be real about it. This is a touchy thing. Like, I don't think I'm the only one here. Like, talking about salary, and having those conversations with your workforce and everything. It can be a touchy thing. It can be emotional. It can be very uncomfortable. And so I'm sure, like, having this down and like having a very frank and open discussion about everything, there may be people who are totally into that, and then there's probably a lot of folks who they're going to have to be a little bit more thoughtful and selective about how they're doing that. Yeah, I mean, I guess any thoughts on that before we do have some more things you want to show with the numbers, and we have about 12 minutes left, so I want to make sure we get to that. But I don't know, any thoughts about that in terms of having those conversations, advice for owners who are trying to kind of reconcile some of this with their candidates and current employees?
Sure. I think so. I'm an employer. I have 16 employees, and I've always decided that my style has always been I always want to know what's going on with them and what they're thinking, whether or not I'm going to like it or not. And that requires to ask uncomfortable questions sometimes. Are you fulfilled? What was your professional goals and earnings this year? Did you come up short? And trying to get a sense for where they fall and what they need. And my answer might not be exactly what they want to hear, but getting everything out on the table, you always want to know as an employer where people stand. That allows you to make informed decisions with them. And then, yes, this guy, like you said, it's one single source of truth. This is data compiled, that we've gathered over 2 years, and we put it into this document, and it can be used however people want to do it. But a lot of calculus goes into deciding how to extend an offer, how much to pay somebody, and a lot of factors go into that. And it's, thinking about what's taken place, the value of the candidate right there in front of you. And you got to think through the future and keeping that person employed, and how you can do that based off what you're going to be offering them now. And it's a lot of those decisions go back to what's relevant to what's in the market, because you're not always the only cat in town. And, candidates aren't stupid, and we can't put their heads into the sand for them. They're going to have conversations with people. They're going to be, on LinkedIn or whatever they're going to be doing to gather information about their own worth. And so it's best to have those frank conversations. And I think it's also good to use the salary guide to get a sense about where you fall. That doesn't mean you start paying more, you start paying less, but it's a starting point to have a dialogue with your team to get a sense for what they feel and what they're thinking. And then also to be able to structure offers moving forward, so it aligns with the market and protects you from premature attrition. So yeah, but it's one single source of truth. It's not the end all be all, but I think it is a good place to start to get a sense for what's out there.
Thank you so much, John. Okay, let's keep it moving, because there's some other things you want to cover here, and then I am noticing this conversation about, okay, what constitutes tier 1 versus tier 2 versus, that's a whole nother can of worms we can get into, but only if we have time. So let's go ahead and move forward. I'm going to go to our favorite slide here, maybe.
Definitely.
So, and we talked about kind of like overall diving in deeper. I mean, one of the cool things about the salary guide is you really do break things down by tier levels, but also very individual roles. And so, I mean, there's a ton of data here. One that you guys wanted to call out was how have current market conditions impacted salary for senior engineers and field techs. So I'll let you jump right in.
Yeah,
Either
that's
one of
been
you.
a big one. I know we're running short on time, so I'll stick to my key points here. I definitely want to get everybody's questions. I've seen the chat blowing up. But two big ones, like John mentioned, that 2021, 2022, it was senior engineer, by far the number one position that we were being asked for. And at this point, it's probably still in the top three going into 2023. So it's not really losing much steam at all. But the one that's had a huge influx since the beginning of this year is field technicians. As people are going back to work, you know, their clients, and as MSPs wanting to bring your employees back into the office, that need to go back on site has come back, right? Thankfully, you don't have to hide in our houses anymore. So Ninja ran an awesome survey polling all of their clients that found, you know, only 10% of people want to go back. Now, the good thing is that when it comes down to it, real world candidates are more open than I would say 10%. It's still a lot of push and pull going on between the two and finding that right balance between hybrid or full remote where they fall in to your business model. And so starting with the senior engineers specifically, one thing we've noticed, so from January 1st up until June 6th, just a couple of days ago, over half of the senior engineer roles we filled were either full remote or local work from home, meaning that they were 5 days at their house, but just within a geographical location so that they could either reach the client sites that you needed them to or make it into your HQ, with a majority of them being full remote. So that's been the big, I think, give. The senior engineers, they have a lot more options, less than before with a lot of these layoffs happening from these major tech firms. But they really do, they hold out, they'll wait to get what they want. They have the inflated salaries, which we are seeing a little bit of reprieve of on our end, which is, you know, great for everyone, especially talking about the percent of your, sorry, I'm blanking on the term, but how much money you're spending on your employees. So that's been something that's definitely getting better, but with the senior engineers, that expectation of at least hybrid is very much there. 80% of all of our senior roles are either full remote, local, or hybrid work from home. So that's been a big one to overcome. And then with and you see here where really the cost benefit of hiring remote, on average, it's about, 8%, depending the role. But that, is a huge cost savings. And what we're seeing is those MSPs that are opting to hire their senior engineers full remote, there are higher expectations, but these candidates are willing to take these lower salaries. I can't tell you how many times I talk to someone, just to give you numbers for an example, like, I want 120, I won't take any less. I have this full remote for 110. You know what? Why don't you send me over there? And we've had great success with that. So the senior engineers definitely are a lot more flexible when that work from home comes, and especially with the emergence of these cloud technologies that don't require them to be on site. A lot of times I'm getting the question, well, why have to go in the office if I don't have technology isn't there? Now, there's so much more to be said why being in the office is helpful. We're hybrid here at Bowman Williams. I think it provides a huge benefit being able to see and work with my team members. And that's been, kind of the talking points we give to those candidates to help them keep moving along the process there with the senior engineers specifically. And now I think, since we've talked a lot of work from home, but with the field techs, I think that's a new one, right? In 2023, of every position we have listed, all 32 in there, a field tech accounts for 10% of what we're getting asked for. So it's a huge influx compared. We've had more field tech roles this year than the last 2 years combined. And where we're finding a lot of success is that some of these people are just tired of being at home. A lot of these candidates understand that if I'm going to learn, I need to get my hands on with these technologies, and really selling that to the candidates has been really helpful. A lot of the MSPs that we've been working with are employing tactics outside of just, taking their salary way above the average, which we have here at 72.5, by letting them go straight to a client site from their house instead of coming into the office first, or putting out that guided growth plan so that they know what they want. Because at the end of the day, especially with these level 1s, level 2s, what they want to hear more than anything is their ability to grow, because they want to be the person in that senior engineering seat. And so we've had a lot of success getting candidates to be willing to go on site. And thankfully, there's been a lot more who actually want to. And so that's a trend that hopefully you're seeing in your respective markets. No, it's one that we are seeing on our end that's been really helpful into getting these candidates to come in and be open to being on the field.
Thank you so much for that, Mark. This is great. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And we've got 3 minutes left. And lots of great comments and lots of great questions. I know there was some more tips that you guys wanted to share. So maybe we can just like go rapid fire for those. And we did have one other question that I wanted to address too from, let's see here. Oh no, I'm going to forget the name. We had a question about basically how can owners stand out? What are some other things aside from just salary that employers can do? And this is actually an element where if you go down to that resources tab again, there's the Bowman Williams salary guide, which everyone should go down and download right now. And then there's also a link to a PDF from Ninja. That's a hiring and retention guide. And this is one of the things we cover. We actually highlight a couple of MSPs who are doing really cool things with their employer brand. The way that they've set up their job descriptions, the way that they've highlighted their company, and the way they show off their employees. They're doing really cool things. For me, it's always good to see an actual example of folks doing well. And so check out that guide. I'll think of the two examples we've called out, and I'll drop links in there so you can check them out too. But there's definitely some people doing this well. But I'll kick that over to you guys. I mean, if you want to answer that question or any other tips you have, kind of final takeaways for folks. John, we'll start with you.
Oh, that's a great question. What can you do to stand out? One of the best tips I've ever heard and seen was where an MSP owner would offer a candidate a decently competitive salary. What they were targeting, or at least slightly below that. But then in the offer letter, they would show guaranteed salary increases for the next, for the second year and the third year. That way the person would know, like, irrespective of management's assessment of my performance, if I'm doing what I should be doing, this is how much money I'll be making. And I thought that's a good way to be able to stand out amongst other employers. It's a different kind of offer, and it also helps with retention. It's quite effective. Another one right now is because of the way the market's structured, I'd cast a wide net, post more jobs than you normally do, anticipate the position is going to take longer to get filled. When you do your final round interview, don't let too much time pass in between. That's been a really crucial juncture for offers falling apart, candidates moving off the market. And when you extend the job offer, especially nowadays, you want to do it in person or video and phone. Don't let your offer speak for itself.
Yeah, and
Nice.
I'll piggyback off that one too, actually, because it's funny. I wrote down a tip to share that actually perfectly went with your question, which was something that we've seen that's been working really well for MSPs. Kind of like John said, they're offering average, if not a little less, but really putting a certified track. So within 3 months, you have to get your AZ 104. And then after, within 9 months, you need to get a Network Plus. And reimbursing them for these certs, which are $200-300 a pop, but you're getting candidates who are willing to take a couple thousand less to come on board to join your company because of that defined growth pattern. And many of these MSPs, they're curating that list. It's not just go get whatever certification that you'd like. It's going to be specific to what you need to better support your clients. That has been a huge help. And actually, one of the MSPs we work with employs that to get people to come on site 5 days a week, and it's worked really well for them.
Very nice. I am going to just drop in a link here another MSP based in California that I've called out a few times for various things, but Accent IT, they actually do a really cool job with their open positions page. They have employee profiles. They have a good track of like, okay, if you're coming in for this role, here's where you could be going, the potential directions for advancement. And they have employee stories. They do a lot of cool things there. So maybe something to get ideas from in terms of, again, that kind of employee branding. And along those lines, we have a giveaway. So we were thinking about what we could potentially give away that would be good for this topic. And as a marketer, I definitely kind of went in this direction of employee branding. And so I found a service called Vocal Video. I'm going to share my screen here. And Vocal Video does testimonials. So this, you could do this for actually for clients, you know, if you don't have a service that you're already utilizing to make video testimonials, make that easier for your clients to provide for you. Another thing that people don't think about is having their employees do it too. I mean, this could really help with your career page and some targeted things too. You know, if you're going out for candidates and you want to show them, you know, someone who's in their role and has some things to say, you know, this could be a good resource. So what Ninja wants to do is select someone here who's an attendee and give you guys a free year of this at the let's see, I can't remember which level we're giving away here. I think the solo level. So basically a year's worth of this service. And of course, if you don't want that, we'll give you an Amazon gift card and the value of that. But just looking at this, there's some other resources that are like this too. But this one, I did a little vetting, seems to be a good one. You can basically, if you don't have that in-house resource of getting a videographer to come in-house and really make a very polished employee, you know, employer branded video, this is a good option for you guys. So let's go to Christine here. And Christine, I'm putting you on the spot. I'll give you a little bit of time here. We can select our winner for that. And while we're doing that, just want to remind folks, so we do have, in addition to the guide, which you can get by looking on the resources, we'll follow up with an email that's got this recording. It's got a link to Bowman Williams and the salary guide. It'll also have a link to a few hiring resources that Ninja's put together. And also links to where you can find us in the future. We're going to be continuing to do webinars throughout the summer. But Mark, John, thank you guys so much for your time. What can people do to keep up with you guys? I mean, what's kind of next in store for you? Obviously, they go to your website. Is there anything else that you would point them to?
Thank you. I think going to the websites where you can access the salary guide is how you can also connect with us. You can find me, John Davenjay, at LinkedIn at Bowman Williams, of course. You can, you know, bother Jonathan. He can connect you with you too if you want. But yeah, it was my pleasure. Ninja was absolutely fantastic to deal with. Jonathan, as everyone knows, he's the best. He probably deserves a round of applause for how great he does these events for us. And I want to just thank him and Ninja for all the collaboration on the salary guide.
Well, hey, no, thank you guys. I mean, this is a pleasure to work with you guys. I'm really glad that we get to help in terms of providing some design help. Big shout out to our design team. But yeah, I mean, really just excited that you guys, I know it was so much work that went into this. It's such a cool resource. Anything that can help give people a wider view and help transparency around all this is super helpful and very much appreciated. So thank you guys for letting us help out. Really appreciate it. Okay. And in terms of our winner, Christine has let me know. Drum roll, please. It's going to be Daniel Lee. Congratulations, Daniel. I will reach out to you right after this webinar. No pressure. If you feel like that service is cool and you want to try it out, it's on us. Go for it. That would be awesome. And if it's not for you and you want something else, we can work that out too. So thank you, Daniel. Congratulations. Thank you, everybody on the call. Great participation. Really appreciate your contributing answers to the poll. I see there's still a lot of questions here. I will pass these on to John and Mark. And if we can answer them too, anyone from Ninja's side, we'll try to get back to you. But thank you, everybody. This has been great. Really appreciate the crowd as always. And John and Mark, thank you once again. Super appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
We appreciate
Jonathan.
it. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye,
Take care,
everybody.
everyone.
Have a good day.